The fork clatters against marble as Marlena Johnson's hand connects with Thomas Sterling's wrist in a sharp, defiant slap. The CEO of Sterling Enterprises stares in shock as his dinner plate crashes to the floor of his Chicago penthouse, sending fragments of bone china across the polished surface. "Don't eat that," she shouts, her voice cutting through the stunned silence of the dinner party. But what happened next shocked everyone in that luxurious dining room. The woman they'd barely noticed, the black maid serving their meals, had just committed what appeared to be career suicide by assaulting one of Chicago's most powerful businessmen. Thomas Sterling, worth over $200 million, sits frozen as 20 pairs of eyes turn toward the commotion. His business associates shift uncomfortably in their Italian leather chairs, champagne glasses suspended mid-sip. Marlena stands defiantly beside the mess she's created, her uniform slightly wrinkled from 12 hours of work, her hands trembling not from fear but from adrenaline. At 32, she knows exactly what this moment could cost her. The job at Sterling's penthouse pays for her night classes at Chicago Community College and keeps the lights on in her South Side apartment where her 8-year-old daughter waits for her every night. Little did anyone in that room know that Marlena had been watching, listening, piecing together fragments of conversation that had sent chills down her spine all evening. While polishing silver in the kitchen 30 minutes earlier, she'd overheard Vincent Morales, the head chef, whispering urgently into his phone, "It's in the salmon. He'll never taste it with all those herbs." Thomas Sterling adjusts his silk tie and glares at her with steel gray eyes that have intimidated boardrooms full of executives. "Have you lost your mind?" His voice carries the authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. The pressure of finalizing a $100 million merger tomorrow weighs heavily on his shoulders, and this disruption threatens to derail everything. "Mr. Sterling, you cannot eat that food." Marlena's voice wavers slightly, but her resolve remains firm. She knows how this looks, a desperate employee causing a scene among Chicago's elite. The mayor's wife gasps audibly from across the table, while Thomas's business partner, Richard Ashford, reaches for his phone as if to call security. This decision would change everything for both of them, though neither realizes it yet. Thomas has spent his 45 years building an empire through calculated risks and unwavering control. He's never had a domestic employee dare to touch him, let alone prevent him from eating a meal that cost more than most people make in a week. "Security." Richard calls out, his voice booming across the penthouse's vaulted ceiling. But Thomas raises his hand, studying Marlena's face with newfound curiosity. Something in her expression, a desperate honesty he rarely encounters in his world of corporate politics, gives him pause. The dinner party guests murmur among themselves, their conversations creating a low buzz of speculation. Mrs. Davidson, the mayor's wife, fans herself dramatically while her husband checks his watch, clearly calculating how quickly they can leave without appearing rude. The crystal chandelier above casts dancing shadows across the scene as everyone waits for Thomas's next move. Marlena swallows hard, knowing she's crossed a line that domestic workers aren't supposed to cross. In her 5 years working for wealthy families, she's learned to be invisible, efficient, and silent. But tonight, silence could mean watching a man die. "I overheard something in the kitchen, Mr. Sterling. Someone put something in your food." Thomas's expression shifts from anger to something more complex as he processes her words. The salmon Wellington still sits before his empty chair, herbs and sauce cooling on the expensive china. Steam rises from the untouched portion, creating an almost sinister image in the penthouse's ambient lighting. But the real shock was still coming. As Thomas leans forward to question Marlena further, she notices a figure in the doorway of the kitchen, Vincent Morales, watching them with cold, calculating eyes that suggest this evening's drama is far from over. The silence that follows the shattering of fine china feels heavier than the expensive crystal chandelier hanging overhead. Thomas Sterling stares at the broken plate scattered across his marble floor, then slowly raises his eyes to meet Marlena's determined gaze. The other dinner guests, his business partners and their wives, sit frozen in shock, their forks suspended midway to their mouths. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Thomas's voice cuts through the tension like a blade, but there's something else there too, curiosity mixed with the anger. Marlena doesn't flinch. Her hands tremble slightly, but her voice remains steady. "Mr. Sterling, I need to speak with you privately. Right now." "You just assaulted me and destroyed my dinner," Thomas snaps, standing so abruptly his chair scrapes against the floor. "Security will escort you. Please." The word comes out stronger than Marlena intended. "Just 5 minutes. Your life might depend on it." The dinner guests exchange uncomfortable glances. Margaret Blackwood, the mayor's wife, whispers something behind her napkin. But Thomas sees something in Marlena's eyes that gives him pause, the same look his grandmother used to get when she knew a storm was coming. "Everyone, please excuse us for a moment," Thomas says, his tone measured. "Continue with your meals." But nobody touches their food. Thomas leads Marlena into his study, closing the heavy oak door behind them. The room smells of leather and old money, lined with first-edition books he's never read and awards he's forgotten earning. "Start talking," he says, crossing his arms. Marlena takes a deep breath. "This afternoon, when I was cleaning the kitchen, I overheard Vincent and 2 of the sous chefs talking. They were whispering, but I caught pieces of it." Her voice drops to match the memory. "Something about making sure the boss gets what's coming to him and tonight's the night." Thomas feels his blood pressure rising, but not from anger this time. "Vincent? Vincent Morales? He's been with us for 3 years. I know it sounds crazy, Mr. Sterling, but when I saw them preparing your plate special, different from everyone else's, I knew something wasn't right. Vincent sent everyone else out of the kitchen when he was finishing it." The weight of her words settles over Thomas like a suffocating blanket. He thinks about the business deal they're celebrating tonight, the acquisition that will either make his company or destroy it. The enemies he's made, the corners he's cut, the people who have every reason to want him gone. But wait, there's something else nagging at him. Earlier today, his assistant mentioned a strange phone call, someone asking about his dinner plans. And last week, those financial irregularities his accountant flagged but dismissed as clerical errors. "Why should I believe you?" Thomas asks, but his voice has lost its edge. "You could be part of whatever this is. How do I know you're not just trying to?" His phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. "Business is about to get very personal. Watch your back, Thomas. Not everyone in your circle wishes you well." Thomas stares at the message, his face draining of color. Marlena notices the change immediately. "What is it?" He shows her the phone. "I got this 30 seconds ago." Marlena's eyes widen. "Mr. Sterling, I swear on my mother's grave, I'm telling you the truth. I've been working 3 jobs just to pay for night school and keep my apartment. I can't afford to lose this one, but I couldn't live with myself if something happened to you and I didn't speak up." The vulnerability in her voice hits Thomas unexpectedly. For the first time in years, someone is putting his well-being above their own interests, someone who has every reason not to care about him at all. "The conversation you overheard," Thomas says carefully, "did they mention anyone else? Any names?" Marlena nods slowly. "They mentioned someone called the advisor. Said he was the one who gave them the go-ahead." Thomas's blood runs cold. Marcus Webb, his closest friend and business advisor for over a decade, is the only person who knew about tonight's menu in advance. Marcus, who's been pushing him toward riskier investments lately. Marcus, who seemed unusually interested in Thomas's will last month. A soft knock interrupts his thoughts. "Thomas?" Marcus's voice calls through the door. "Everything all right in there?" The guests are getting worried. Thomas and Marlena exchange a loaded look. She mouths the word careful while positioning herself where she can see both Thomas and the door. "Just a moment, Marcus," Thomas calls back, his mind racing through possibilities, connections, betrayals. Outside in the hallway, a shadow moves past the gap under the door, lingering just a moment too long before footsteps retreat. Someone has been listening, and now they know that Thomas knows something is wrong. The question burning in both their minds hangs heavy in the air. If Marcus is involved, how deep does this conspiracy go, and who else in Thomas's inner circle wants him dead? The silence in the penthouse stretched like a taut wire as every eye turned to Marlena. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, the shattered plate at her feet reflecting the chandelier's light like broken promises. Thomas Sterling stared at her, his jaw clenched, disbelief and fury warring across his face. "Have you lost your mind?" Thomas's voice cut through the tension like ice. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Marlena straightened her shoulders, meeting his gaze despite the tremor in her hands. "Mr. Sterling, I need to speak with you. Privately. Right now." The dinner guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, their expensive jewelry catching the light as they shifted in their seats. Margaret Whitfield, Thomas's longtime business partner, dabbed at her lips with her napkin, her calculating eyes never leaving Marlena. "Thomas, perhaps we should call security," Margaret suggested coolly. "This woman has clearly overstepped." "No." Thomas held up a hand, something in Marlena's desperate expression giving him pause. "Everyone, please excuse us for a moment." As the room reluctantly emptied, Marlena's resolve nearly crumbled. The weight of what she'd just done, slapping food from the hand of one of Chicago's most powerful men, threatened to overwhelm her. But the memory of that hushed conversation in the kitchen corridor burned in her mind. "This better be good," Thomas said once they were alone, his voice deadly quiet. Marlena took a shaky breath. "About an hour ago, I was in the service hallway when I heard Vincent Morales talking to someone on his phone. He said the job was almost done, that you wouldn't make it through dinner." Thomas's expression shifted from anger to skepticism. "Vincent's been my head chef for 3 years. Why would he?" "He mentioned money, Mr. Sterling. A lot of money. And he kept saying they'll never trace it back to us." The color drained from Thomas's face as the implications hit him. His phone buzzed on the table, and he glanced down to see an unknown number. The message made his blood run cold. "You should have been more careful about who you trust. The game ends tonight." But what happened next would change everything Marlena thought she knew about trust and betrayal. Because as Thomas reached for his phone with trembling fingers, Vincent himself appeared in the doorway, his chef's whites pristine, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Sterling," Vincent said softly, his accent thicker than usual. "I think we need to talk." Marlena instinctively stepped back, her heart hammering against her ribs. Vincent's dark eyes flicked between her and Thomas, and something cold flickered in their depths. "You weren't supposed to be in that hallway, Marlena," Vincent continued, his voice carrying a note of genuine regret. "You've always been too observant for your own good." Thomas moved protectively in front of Marlena, his earlier anger now replaced by something far more dangerous. "How long, Vincent? How long have you been planning this?" Vincent's shoulders sagged slightly, the weight of his confession visible. 3 months. Ever since you announced the merger with Hartwell Industries. Do you know how many jobs that's going to cost? How many families will lose everything? So you decided to poison me?" Thomas's voice was barely controlled fury. "Not poison," Vincent said quietly. "Something more permanent. Something that would look like a heart attack. The stress, the long hours, who would question it?" Marlena felt the room spinning. The man she'd worked alongside for months, who'd always been kind to her, who'd covered her shifts when she had exams, he'd been planning murder. But Vincent's next words shattered everything she thought she understood about the night's events. "The thing is," he said, his eyes now focused entirely on Marlena, "I wasn't working alone. And the person who hired me? They're still in this building. Still at that dinner table." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Someone Thomas trusted implicitly, someone sitting in that elegant dining room right now, had orchestrated his death. And they had no idea their plan had just been exposed. Vincent reached into his jacket pocket, and Thomas tensed, but instead of a weapon, he pulled out a small recording device. "I kept insurance," Vincent said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Every conversation, every payment, every detail. It's all here." As the three of them stood in that opulent room, the weight of betrayal thick in the air, one terrifying question remained unanswered. Which of Thomas's trusted dinner guests was a cold-blooded killer willing to destroy anyone who stood in their way? The accusation hits Marlena like a physical blow. Jennifer Martinez, one of the newer kitchen staff members, stands with her arms crossed, her voice sharp with conviction. "I saw her talking to Vincent earlier," Jennifer declares, pointing directly at Marlena. Real hushed conversation by the service elevator. "And she's been acting strange all week, asking questions about Mr. Sterling's schedule, his food preferences." The other staff members exchange glances, doubt creeping across their faces. Thomas feels his chest tighten as he watches Marlena's expression crumble. For a moment, even he wavers. Could he have been wrong to trust her? "That's not what happened," Marlena says quietly, but her voice lacks its usual strength. "Jennifer, you know that's not true." "Do I?" Jennifer shrugs. "All I know is you've been desperate for money, talking about your mom's medical bills. Maybe someone made you an offer you couldn't refuse." The room falls silent except for the distant hum of kitchen equipment. Thomas studies Marlena's face, searching for any sign of deception. Instead, he sees something that makes his decision for him, tears of frustration, not guilt, pooling in her eyes. "That's enough," Thomas says firmly. "I need to speak with everyone individually, starting with the kitchen staff. Jennifer, Vincent, you're first." As the others file out, Thomas catches Marlena's arm gently. "Stay close," he whispers. "I believe you, but we need proof." Over the next hour, Thomas conducts what feels like interrogations. Jennifer's story remains consistent but feels rehearsed. Vincent sweats profusely and contradicts himself twice. But it's when Thomas retreats to his home office to review the evening's events that everything begins to unravel. His laptop screen glows as he pulls up the company's financial records, something he should have done weeks ago. The numbers don't lie. Someone has been siphoning money from the Sterling Industries accounts, small amounts at first, then larger sums. The pattern is sophisticated, almost invisible. But what chills Thomas to the bone is the access log. The transactions originated from an IP address he recognizes immediately, his best friend and business partner, David Richardson's home office. "David," Thomas whispers to himself, the betrayal cutting deeper than any business loss could. They've been friends since college, built the company together, stood as best man at each other's weddings. A soft knock interrupts his thoughts. Marlena enters hesitantly, holding something in her hands. "Mr. Sterling, I found something," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was cleaning the guest office earlier, and I noticed the security monitor was still on. I thought you'd want to know that the cameras caught everything from tonight." She holds out a small flash drive, her hands trembling slightly. "But there's more," she continues. "I went back through some of the older footage, the nights when I worked late. I saw things, conversations, meetings that didn't make sense then, but they do now." Thomas takes the drive, feeling its weight like it contains the answers to everything. "What kind of conversations?" "Mr. Richardson," Marlena says, the name hanging heavy between them. "He's been here several times when you were traveling. Meeting with people I didn't recognize, people who didn't look like they belonged in your world. And tonight, before the dinner, I saw him in the kitchen talking to Vincent." The pieces click together with devastating clarity. David's recent insistence on this particular catering company, his knowledge of tonight's menu, his suggestion that Thomas host this crucial dinner with potential investors at home rather than a restaurant. Thomas's phone buzzes. A text from David, "How's dinner going? Hope you're feeling well." The casual cruelty of it makes Thomas's stomach lurch. His closest friend, watching from afar, waiting to hear if his plan had succeeded. "We need to call the police," Thomas says, but Marlena shakes her head. "Not yet," she replies, surprising him with her tactical thinking. "If we move too fast, he'll destroy evidence. And those people he was meeting with, they might disappear. We need to be smart about this." Thomas looks at this woman who has risked everything to save his life, who is now strategizing to catch his would-be killer. The contrast with David's betrayal is stark and humbling. Tomorrow morning, Marlena continues, There's a board meeting, right? He'll be there, confident that his plan worked. That's when we show them what's on this drive. Thomas nods slowly, understanding the weight of what they're planning. In less than 12 hours, he'll have to look his best friend in the eye and reveal that he knows everything. But first, they have to make it through the night, knowing that David Richardson is still out there, and his plan has only been delayed, not defeated. Marlena clutches the flash drive in her trembling hand as she steps into the Sterling Corporation boardroom, where Thomas sits surrounded by his most trusted advisors. The mahogany table gleams under harsh fluorescent lights, and every face turns toward her with varying degrees of skepticism and annoyance. But Marlena has come too far to back down now. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she says, her voice steady despite the weight of 20 pairs of eyes on her, "but you all need to see this." Thomas looks up from his papers, his expression softening when he sees her. After everything they've been through these past few days, he's learned to trust her instincts. "What is it, Marlena?" She plugs the flash drive into the presentation screen, and within seconds, grainy surveillance footage fills the wall. The timestamp shows 3 days ago, and the camera angle captures the kitchen prep area perfectly. There, clear as day, is Marcus Wellington, Thomas's longtime friend and chief financial officer, carefully removing a small vial from his jacket pocket. The room falls silent as they watch Marcus pour a clear liquid into the sauce that was meant for Thomas's dinner. The same dinner Marlena had knocked from his hands. "That's impossible," Marcus sputters, his face draining of color as he stares at his own image on the screen. "This has to be doctored somehow." But the evidence is undeniable. The footage shows him checking over his shoulder, ensuring no one is watching, before calmly disposing of the empty vial in the kitchen trash. Marlena had found it there during her own investigation, wrapped in paper towels and hidden beneath coffee grounds. Thomas's hands shake as he grips the edge of the table. "Marcus, how could you? 20 years of friendship, and you tried to." He can't even finish the sentence. The betrayal cuts deeper than any business loss ever could. Marcus Wellington had been his college roommate, his best man, the godfather to his children. They'd built Sterling Corporation together from the ground up, starting in a cramped garage with nothing but ambition and dreams. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," Marcus says desperately, his composure finally cracking. "The gambling debts, the threats from dangerous people. I needed the insurance money from your death to save myself. I never wanted it to come to this, Thomas, but I had no choice." "There's always a choice," Marlena interjects quietly, thinking of her own struggles, working 3 jobs, going to night school, caring for her sick mother, and how she'd never compromised her integrity despite the obstacles. The police arrive within minutes, having been called the moment Marlena revealed her evidence. As they lead Marcus away in handcuffs, he looks broken, defeated by his own greed and poor decisions. The man who once shared Thomas's vision of success had become consumed by desperation and lost sight of everything that truly mattered. In the aftermath, as the boardroom empties and the shock begins to settle, Thomas finds himself alone with Marlena. The woman who had risked her job, her reputation, and potentially her safety to save his life stands quietly by the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. "I don't know how to thank you," Thomas says, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life, and I treated you like a suspect. I'm ashamed of how I behaved." Marlena turns to face him, and for the first time since this ordeal began, she smiles. "You don't need to thank me, Mr. Sterling. I did what anyone with a conscience would do." But Thomas shakes his head. "No, not anyone. You showed more courage and integrity than people I've known for decades. You deserve recognition for that." 3 months later, the Sterling Corporation hosts its annual charity gala, but this year feels different. Thomas takes the stage, looking out at a crowd that includes board members, employees, and community leaders. But his eyes find Marlena, sitting at a front table wearing the cap and gown she'd earned from her business degree, fully funded by the scholarship program Thomas established in her honor. "Sometimes," Thomas begins, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "it takes extraordinary circumstances to show us who we really are and who deserves our trust. This year, I learned that heroism doesn't come with a title or a corner office. It comes from ordinary people making extraordinary choices when it matters most. The applause is thunderous as Marlena rises, tears streaming down her face. But these aren't tears of sadness, they're tears of vindication, of dreams finally within reach, of a future bright with possibility. Later that evening, as the gala winds down, Thomas approaches Marlena one final time. "The offer still stands," he says warmly. "Director of Operations, Sterling Corporation. You've more than proven yourself." Marlena shakes her head with a grateful smile. "Thank you, but I've got my own dreams to chase now. Though I hope we'll always be friends." As she walks out into the Chicago night, diploma in hand and head held high, Marlena Johnson embodies a truth that too often gets forgotten in our complex world. Sometimes the greatest courage comes from simply doing what's right, regardless of the cost. Her story reminds us all that integrity isn't just about grand gestures, it's about the small daily choices we make, the voices we choose to trust, and the moments when we decide to act on our convictions, even when the world seems stacked against us. What moment in your life required that kind of courage? Share your story in the comments below, and let's celebrate the everyday heroes among us who choose what's right over what's easy.